happiness goes down as well. I'll just tell you it's kind of a natural phenomena, but many people mischaracterize themselves on Facebook. Whenever they're doing something exciting or fun, they take a picture of it. And then the person sitting at home is thinking, wow, this person is having all this fun, and I'm not having any fun at all. My life is terrible. But when they do something exciting, they post their picture on Facebook, and the very person who they were jealous of is now jealous of them. And so often it becomes a pride book situation and an outdo type of situation. And in reality, they are not being transparent on who they really are in the whole process. The more screen time, the less sleep. And sleep also has a role. Studies show that our circadian rhythms do much better with early to bed, early to rise. We'll make more melatonin at night. We'll be able to retain what we learned that day. And we'll actually be more efficient with our sleep as well. In fact, studies are showing sleep is worth far more before than after midnight. 2 hours good sleep before 12 o'clock is worth more than 4 hours after 12 o'clock. And so brain workers and people with high IQ and EQ are very well aware of this. Music also has its role. Music enters the brain through its emotional regions, which include the temporal lobe and limbic system. From there, some kinds of music tend to produce a very positive frontal lobe response that positively influences the will, moral worth, and reasoning power in a positive way. And this is characterized by more traditional classical type of music. This is a picture I took of the Dallas Symphony playing a Christmas concert. Hark the Herald Angels Sing is very frontal lobe enhancing, it turns out, when it's played in the right way, as well as a lot of other hymns. In fact, I was encouraged when we were coming up or in the back hearing hymns being sung. It actually is a positive frontal lobe experience. And in fact, young people are taking hold of this in a major way. In America, in fact, you can buy it here in South Africa, there's an organ that simulates pipe organ music better than any other organ. It's called a Johannes organ. It actually is originated up there in the Netherlands. And they will go in and simulate the precise sound of some of these grand organs in Europe. And those organs don't have a button where you can have your syncopated boom-cha, boom-cha, boom-cha at all. They're just classical organs. And they are selling in record numbers in the United States. And I asked the organ dealer in our area, why are Johannes organs selling so much? There's none of this popular music that you can get from it. And he said it's because the young people are rejecting the music of their parents. And they're going back to the music of their grandparents. They haven't heard the music of the grandparents much, but when they do hear it, they recognize that there's something enhancing going on about it. And so many people, there's a paradigm shift that's occurring, but many people are looking for this reverential, uplifting, excellent music as part of a frontal lobe enhancing program. Now, other kinds of music will evoke very little, if any, frontal lobe response, but will produce a large emotional response with very little logical or moral interpretation. And this is characterized by syncopated rock and roll rhythms that have become prominent even as part of religious services. Studies show that even if there's religious words there, within 3 minutes you will no longer be in beta wave activity by listening to that music. It's very similar to entertainment television. I remember one time I was being interviewed after our book Proof Positive came out, and she was very interested in the frontal lobe of the brain. It was a radio host of a very large Christian radio station that was very prominent in the Christian rock and roll. And she was flipping through the book and seeing there about music and the studies on music, and she says, you know, I can understand this, you know, the rock and roll and the heavy metal, this isn't good, but she says, what about if we put good religious words to it? And I just answered her question simply by asking this. Do you think alcohol would actually be good for the frontal lobe of your brain if you just drank it while you were in church? And she said, okay, I understand, and she went on. And I must admit, at the end of that program, I didn't really want to reveal all this, but she was asking me specific questions. And you know, you can't withhold the truth when you're being asked specific questions. But at the end of that, within 20 minutes of that program ending, the owner of the radio station called our office, wanted to talk to me, and I thought, okay, I'm probably going to get an earful. And so I said, hello, this is Dr. Nedley. She says, that was so interesting and thrilling. I want all of your materials. I know Dr. James Dobson. He needs to know about all of this, and we need to get the information out. And so many people are just not knowledgeable in regards to what certain lifestyle habits are doing to the brain. And I think that fits the vast majority of humanity. Many times they just don't realize what is happening, and they don't realize that upbeat music is not necessarily uplifting music to the brain. Interestingly, Ellen White talked about this as well. She said, the things you have described as taking place in Indiana, the Lord has shown me would take place just before the close of probation. Every uncouth thing will be demonstrated. There will be shouting with drums, music, and what else? Dancing. When you hear dance music being played in a religious service, you're actually hearing the fulfilling of prophecy. She says the senses of rational beings will become so confused that they cannot be trusted to make what? Right decisions. What area of the brain is she talking about there? That's the frontal lobe, our will, our decision-making portion. But she says when this music is played, it will actually be called the moving of the Holy Spirit. But obviously, that's not a spirit that puts you in control of yourself, which is what God's freedom is all about. This study showed even if you don't like good music, if you're exposed to it, it will improve your mood and reduce stress. 6 sessions of classical music therapy were held at the University of Florida. A 12-week period in 23 to 45-year-olds, these subjects showed improved scores on tests of overall mood. They reported feeling less depressed, less fatigue, and their cortisol levels improved. When the cortisol level goes down, your memory goes up, and your brain becomes much more able to learn. This was an interesting study. 24 university students performed 2 tests of attention. Positive moods were induced by playing Bach's Brandenburg Concerto No. 3. And by the way, whether you prefer this music or not, when you intently listen to Bach's Brandenburg Concerto No. 3, you cannot but help but have your mood uplifted. It's a very positive, uplifting piece. Negative moods by a Prokofiev piece played at half speed. Now that also shows you that not all classical music is good for you. Prokofiev is a classical Russian composer, but he composes a lot of disharmonic, disrhythmic types of music, and studies show that when Prokofiev is played, particularly that Prokofiev piece, and you slow it down, it will actually induce significant depression. To produce a neutral mood, participants read a series of facts and figures about Canada. Hope we don't have any Canadians here. But in America, it's shown that if you want to produce a neutral mood, you just give facts and figures about Canada, and it produces a calm, neutral mood. When they were in a positive mood, participants scored higher on a remote associates task, a measure of creative thinking. When feeling happy, Anderson explained, your attentional window is actually bigger. It's like looking through a big window versus a small window. The mental health advantages. Now there's a number of studies showing that if you want to be more accurate in sports, listening to this same type of music will make you more accurate. Even in shooting a rifle, you'll be more accurate in that shooting range by listening to classical music. And of course other forms of athletic performance is showing it as well. The other side of the coin, though, is Alvin Toffler. At least what he mentioned here. He's a media expert. He understands this very well. He wrote a lot of communications textbooks. But he says constant stimulation of the senses shuts down the analytical processes. So often it's not just the rapid scene of reference on TV. You're now putting syncopated rhythm music to it. Then you're putting sensual images on top of that. And that's what you call sensory overload, constant stimulation of the senses. And notice what happens. It shuts down the analytical processes and ultimately shuts down the ability to face life rationally. This leads to escape techniques that involve withdrawal, apathy, and rejection of disciplined thinking when faced with difficult duties and decisions. When you are being faced with a difficult duty and decision, and a number of you raised your hands, you're in the 12th grade. You've got a difficult duty and decision coming up. What are you going to major in? Where are you going to go to school? And when you have a difficult duty and decision to make, you want your frontal lobe to be at its highest point. You want to be able to analyze every point of information and make a wise decision. But if this is what you're partaking in, is constant stimulation of the senses, notice what will happen when you have a difficult decision to make. You'll have withdrawal and apathy, and you will actually reject disciplined thinking. Bad news. You will become a loser unless you change. Now, the brain's optimizing music. There's 6 characteristics. Melodious is part of it, can be simple yet attractive. Beautiful non-dissonance harmonies. If it centers in on the dissonance all the time, like jazz does, it actually shows a suppression in frontal lobe function. Straight rhythms or march rhythms. If it makes you want to stand up and march around the room, that's actually good for the frontal lobe of the brain. If it makes you want to stand up straight and then swing the hips like this, not good for the frontal lobe of the brain. If the rhythm is less prominent than the melody and harmony, that's brain optimizing. If the music tells a story where you can imagine a story, that's optimizing. And even more optimizing is when it's very reverential and uplifting music. Quite positive for the frontal lobe of the brain. Ellen White says, good singing is like the music of the birds, subdued and melodious. She also says this, many Protestants suppose that the Catholic religion is unattractive and that its worship is a dull, meaningless round of ceremony. Here they mistake. The music is what? Unsurpassed. The rich notes of the deep-toned organ, blending with the melody of many voices as it swells through the lofty domes and pillared aisles of our grand cathedrals, cannot fail to impress the mind with awe and reverence. One of the reasons why the Catholic religion is growing by leaps and bounds in a silent way, not a lot is being said about it, but one of the reasons is the reverential tone. People feel like they're in the presence of something grander than them when they come in and particularly hear that type of music. She goes on to say, those who in heaven join with the angelic choir in their anthem of praise must learn on earth the song of heaven, the keynote of which is thanksgiving. She says the themes of the song should be love and praise and adoration to God and thanksgiving for the wonderful beauties of creation. She said heavenly music is mellow-toned, harmonious music, and even the sweetest music. She gives an experience of listening to this music. Said the angel, list ye. Soon I heard many musical instruments, all sounding in perfect strains, sweet and harmonious. It surpassed any music I had ever heard, seeming to be full of mercy, compassion, and elevating holy joy. It thrilled through my whole being. Don't mistake it. Good music can be extremely thrilling. But when we are addicted to frontal lobe suppressant music, we can't enjoy it as much, number one. And number two, we will think our music is benefiting us because when you're addicted to something and you feel withdrawal and you get it again, you actually feel calmer and more relaxed. Just like an alcoholic under withdrawal will feel better when alcohol is on board. And so it requires abstinence from alcohol to get over alcoholism. And in regards to frontal lobe suppressant music, it requires a decision to make a change and to give it up. And by the way, I'm not asking anything of you that anyone here cannot do. You can make this decision. Yes, it may seem sacrificial up front, but it is a decision that you will greatly benefit from. And this is the second decision that Ben Carson made. Is a decision that he actually made. His mother gave up the television for him and enhanced his life. But he made a decision to only listen to good music. And when he separated the Siamese twins, it was a 72-step creative surgery that no one had ever performed before, and it required 72 different stages. There would be other specialists coming in and anesthesia people coming in, and it had to be a well-orchestrated event. He actually timed it ahead of time and set each stage to classical music in the operating room. Philippians says, finally, brethren, whatever is true, whatever is worthy of reverence and is honorable and seemly. And I'll just tell you, some music today, you cannot describe it as being reverent, even though it might have religious words. Whatever is worthy of reverence, is honorable and seemly, whatever is just, whatever is pure, having that beautiful, pure sound, whatever is lovely and lovable, whatever is kind and winsome and gracious. And some music out there that people love is just not kind and gracious music. If there is any virtue, if there is any excellence, if there is anything worthy of praise, think on and weigh and take account of these things. That's why we put things to music, so that we can contemplate on it. And so Philippians 4:8 is a good text to refer to in regards to musical tastes. Now, before I close, I would like to also go into the dopamine reward circuitry a little bit, so that you can understand something that also is a major issue inhibiting the success of young people. And can someone tell me what time it is? It is 4:45? All right, 4:45. I don't think I'm going to be able to present this because I know the next program is coming on board. What's that? It's fine. I don't know. Are you the musicians? Okay. All right. The musician said it's fine. Okay. So we'll try to hurry through it so you have time for you as well. But at the top of our human reward list, dopamine is one of the things that makes us seek pleasure. At the top of our human reward list are 5 things that the Lord actually implanted in us. Desire for food, desire for sex, desire for love, desire for friendship, and a desire for what else? Novelty. Now, the reason why he put those things there is because if we did not have a hunger desire, which is a lower brain desire, if we didn't eat for 24 hours and we didn't have that desire, we could get so focused on something that we would actually forget to eat. And we would actually lose nutrition, lose brain power, and have problems as a result of that. Now, just because we have a hunger area in the brain, because the brain just says you're hungry, it's our frontal lobe that can choose when to eat, if to eat, what to eat, and how to eat, and in what atmosphere we're going to eat it in. And so that's the frontal lobe doing the choosing part. So he wanted us to have the desire there, but then he wanted us to have a balanced brain where we would be able to choose that. And the same is true in regards to libido. It's implanted in every human being, what we call the desire for sexual relations, but the frontal lobe is there to tell us if we're going to do it, and who we're going to do it with, and when, and all of those sorts of things. And of course, what you need to recognize, some of these desires are not quite the same. By the way, I have some people who are overweight that tell me that they are addicted to food, and it's not like alcohol. You know, alcohol, we talked about abstaining from it to overcome it. They say, if I abstain from food, I'm going to die, but I'm addicted to food. But I have to tell them something. They're not addicted to all food. I have yet to find someone who's addicted to broccoli. They might be addicted to what they put on the broccoli, but no one is addicted to broccoli. And one of the nice things about things that you need versus things that you don't need, you can never get enough of what you don't need, because what you don't need will never really satisfy you. And so you continue to end up searching for more. But you can get enough broccoli and say, I've had enough. And you can go on to something else. And so not all food has that addictive potential to it. Notice love and friendship are there, but why is novelty there? The Lord implanted that so that we would have a desire to learn, to be able to learn new things and learn other areas. But often the novelty is taken advantage of, particularly when it comes to the sex side of things. These 5 things are called natural reinforcers as contrasted with addictive chemicals, and they help you not to forget about things during prolonged focus that would hinder your ability to accomplish the designer's will and could even compromise your ability to survive. The bigger the squirt of dopamine, the more you want something. No dopamine, and you just ignore it. Chocolate cake and ice cream, a big blast. Celery, not so much. It turns out sexual stimulation and orgasm are the biggest natural blast of dopamine available to your reward circuitry. One of dopamine's nicknames is the molecule of addiction. Psychologist Susan Weincheck explained in a 2009 article the neurotransmitter dopamine does not cause people to experience pleasure, but rather causes a seeking behavior. Dopamine wants us to want, desire, seek out, and search, she wrote, the anticipator. It's the opioid system that causes one to feel pleasure. Yet the dopamine system is stronger than the opioid system, she explained. We seek more than we are satisfied, and addiction may be thought of as wanting run amok. Now, there are some brain changes that take place in response to supernormal stimuli. And by the way, if you want to look it up, it's called the Coolidge effect. It's even in animals. Studies show that when you put a male rat into a cage with a female rat, guess what happens? There's a flurry of activity and sexual relations occur. But that rat is going to be done at that point. And even if the female wants more, the male rat is not interested until a certain period of time goes through. There's a period of time in which you go through the doldrums, testosterone levels drop, etc. But if you furnish that rat a novel female, he will then go into it again, even while he's in the doldrums. And that's what's called supernormal stimuli. These supernormal versions of natural rewards can override our brain's satiation mechanisms. The I-dumb feeling goes away, creating unhealthy brain changes. Unhealthy food and unhealthy sex can be more addictive to more people than substances such as alcohol. Research confirms anticipation of reward and novelty amplify one another to increase excitement and rewire the limbic system. So what are the unhealthy brain changes that occur with supernormal stimuli? Desensitization, which is a numbed pleasure response. And by the way, I'm not going in, I have a whole presentation called Sex and Mental Health that goes into all the details of it. But let me just tell you that pornography and masturbation and orgasm outside of a healthy marriage relationship all qualify as supernormal stimuli. And they all produce these brain changes. Desensitization, a numb pleasure response. Among other changes, dopamine and D2 receptors decline in the brain's reward circuitry, leaving the addict less sensitive to pleasure and hungry for dopamine-raising activities and substances of all kinds. In other words, more pleasure leads to less pleasure. The addict then tends to neglect interests, stimuli, and behaviors that were once of high personal relevance. In addition, there's a sensitized area of the brain, which is a super memory of pleasure. Rewired nerve connections cause the reward circuitry to buzz in response to addiction-related cues or thoughts. This Pavlovian memory makes the addiction more compelling than other activities in the addict's life, and when this occurs, the individual is also more sensitive and more irritable with the usual nuisances of life. Anxiety goes up when this happens. And so we begin to have mental health issues. People become much more irritable with the nuisances of life. Then hypofrontality occurs. Willpower erodes. Alterations in frontal lobe gray matter and white matter correlate with reduced impulse and control, weakened ability to foresee consequences, and dysfunctional stress circuits. The limbic system overrides the frontal lobe, and in this state, the individual is prone to relapse into a previous addiction in response to stress and make a number of bad decisions. Well, after a rat has sex, he exhibits an initial cycle of measurable effects. The first part of the cycle lasts 96 hours. During this time, the rat's sexual motivation is nil to sluggish, and he is hyperreactive to a variety of drugs. After these 4 days, he's able to copulate again, but it will take him 15 days to return to maximum studliness. Now, just to let you know, rat cycles are actually shorter than human cycles. The study's authors state this: the long-lasting sexual inhibition resulting from copulation to satiation constitutes a protective mechanism against overstimulation of the brain circuits involved in its processing. Do you think that's a good thing? It actually is a good thing, because it's going to prevent those 3 bad brain changes. During the decreased libido stage, there's only one way a rat will have sex again, and that is furnish a novel female. Among the resulting plastic changes scientists have already measured in the brains of sexually exhausted rats are reduced androgen receptors. What are androgen receptors? Anybody? Those are the receptors that make testosterone work. You have to actually put it onto an androgen receptor. Testosterone is actually good in small amounts for women, and it's good in larger amounts for men, but it helps actually improve the IQ of men. It improves their courageousness. It actually improves several different factors, but when the rats are sexually exhausted, the androgen receptors go down and the estrogen receptors go up. What does that mean? That means a man will actually become more effeminate as a result of sexual excess. And actually, Ellen White described this occurring in Solomon, how he became very effeminate as a result of his sexual excess. A lot of people think you're effeminate and then you sexually exhaust yourself, but it's actually the other way around in most cases. Increase in opioids then occur that dampen libido. And during the doldrums, about 1/3 of rats manage to ejaculate with a receptive female, but they can only do it once, and these super studs didn't get the usual benefit from ejaculation. Normal ejaculation mellows a male rat, reducing his anxiety for a bit, but these guys remained anxious. These rats were also more reactive to drugs than other satiated rats, evidence signs of low dopamine along the lines of drug withdrawal. There's an endocrine cycle after sex also present in human. Researchers find a mysterious yet consistent spike of testosterone around day 7. We have many 7-day cycles, but the testosterone level will be low, the androgen receptors lower, and they will start to go up at day 7, and they even peak further at day 15. Prolactin release is 4 times higher after intercourse compared to masturbation. Prolactin is a good chemical, and having sex with a loving spouse increases oxytocin, which is a good thing as well. But masturbation delivers a far weaker "you're done" message, and as a result, there's a chance of overdoing it. Now, you can even overdo it in a marriage relationship. A lot of people that are married use their marriage relationship as a license to actually have sex that will produce the same type of supersexual changes that occur in the area of the brain. One of the reasons why it's well described that males who go without sex, single males, often produce their best athletic performance, their best creativity, their best inventions before they get married. And once they get married, you'll see this even in sports, you'll see not only the plateauing, but the decreasing in physical and mental function. And it often occurs simply due to the excess. If they didn't excess it, it wouldn't necessarily be an issue. It's kind of interesting in the Bible, there were time periods where they had to abstain for, does anyone know how long? Marriage partners had to abstain every month for about 15 days in a row. During the period, they had to abstain, then they had to wait another 7 days during the washout, and it turns out when a woman ovulates, the libido is highest, and a man going 15 days, you're going to see spiking of that occurring, and so there was no problems with female libido in the Israelite world. There was also no problem with male libido. At 15 days, they had relations, and they were able to reproduce far better than the surrounding nations, even though they were having less sex. And of course, more pleasure leads to less pleasure. So their pleasurable effects of this would last 15 days in the positive effects in regards to the brain. Now, before we close, I just want to look at a secular site. If you want to look at a secular site, yourbrainonporn.com will go into the science of all this. But in this site, they recommend that you eliminate pornography, masturbation, and orgasm for at least 90 days. It's called the 90-day reboot. And some of those people that are into masturbation and those sort of things are wondering, how in the world can I do this? I've been doing this since the age of 12 many times, and it's, you know, an issue. I'll just tell you, don't laugh about it. We've had people come to our program that are masturbating 7 times a day. Significant mental health issues emerge. Significant learning problems emerge from this. And of course, some are doing it far less, but many started at an early age as well, and it has become a major problem in our society. And of course, pornography makes it a lot more easier, because you go into the fantasy world with pornography, and often they're utilizing it specifically for this purpose. So it's called a 90-day reboot. And I had one of our researchers that worked for me, Michael Hitt, go into this site, because there's thousands of hits. This site has only been up for less than a year, and there's thousands of hits on the blog of people trying to go through this 90-day reboot, recognizing it would be beneficial based on the science and going through it, and then those that are successful. And notice what happens. After the 90 days, they'll have increased happiness, pride, joy, confidence, and calmness. Their happiness is now found in simpler things, such as a walk, a nice meal, and music. They're experiencing more emotions. They're feeling less numb to life. They're loving and accepting themselves. They now take a stand for what is right, and they don't back down. They're willing to state their opinion. They have an increased hope. A better future always seems obtainable, no matter how difficult things get, they'll talk about. Then in a man, it'll talk about less social anxiety, fear of judgment. They'll initiate conversation more often. They'll have increased conversational skills. They'll utilize eye contact more. They will smile more. Their vocabulary actually goes up. Their words come to them more easily. They feel more in touch with other people and their emotions. In addition, they're more focused on interaction with people. Real women, they say, now look more attractive to them. Of course, the problem with pornography is if you're doing that, even your spouse can look like cold oatmeal. Just abstaining from that can have some significant advantages. More attention to interaction and physical touch than the visual. Increased motivation to meet and talk to women. The butterflies won't go away, but your sex drive will provide a counterforce to overcome them. Creation of a magnetic sexual aura, a sexual energy that attracts more attention from women, both known and unknown. They feel less intimidated in the presence of an attractive woman as well. And if they are married, they're enjoying the sex better, and they're not just pursuing orgasm, and they talk about how their satisfaction goes up tremendously after a 90-day reboot, even in a marriage relationship. They take action. Now, increased determination, energy, and productivity. They'll talk about their reading, writing, drawing, working out gets better. Their quality of sleep goes up. Physically, their posture gets better. They actually have clearer skin, less acne, increased athletic performance, stamina and physical strength. Those involved particularly where they need a lot of testosterone in the fighting world, they'll talk about abstaining for long periods of time, and the one that wins virtually always is the one that has abstained the longest from sexual relations. Deeper, more manly voice. Increased vision has been reported in a few people. Increased clarity of mind, loss of brain fog, increased concentration. Their grades go up. Better decision making, both short-term and long-term. Their memory goes up. Less mood swings. And then I had them do some quotes from people. These are actual quotes now as a result of going through this 90-day reboot. I love interacting with people. My mental focus is incredible, allowing me to start overachieving at work. It's being noticed. So even at work, their productivity goes up, and then others will talk about what has happened to you. Man, you're getting a lot of things done. Something has dramatically changed. And the guy can just sit there and smile because he doesn't want to tell what he actually is going through. My confidence seems indestructible, composure unflappable. This will be my regular wardrobe, replacing metal t-shirts and workout shorts. It's been over a decade since I started looking at and watching porn, and this feels like how I truly am. Creativity is now flowing out of me. It feels like my motivation to do things is more grounded in bigger picture type of thinking rather than going after what feels good in the moment. I want to go out now. I want to socialize. I want to touch. I want to work out. I want to live. I have no interest in non-productive things now, like playing video games or being online all day for no reason. I'm no longer an angry person. A little bit of advice. This is while they were going through the 90-day reboot. The best thing I did for myself was to what? Be busy. So have a schedule. Have productivity. One person said your prefrontal cortex is a sensible, logical you, telling you to improve your life and move on. Your limbic system is the imbalanced, undisciplined you that wants the easy option. PMO tips the favor and balance of the limbic system, winning every time. What's PMO? Pornography, masturbation, orgasm. I'm no longer looking at women wondering what they look like naked and what they're like in bed. Freedom. I got my life back. I'm no longer a slave to my addiction. Whatever anyone says about placebo, this one thing for me is completely measurable, tangible benefit from no masturbation. No one can tell me the effects are placebo. I can easily take on complex mathematical or engineering problems. And then the females also talk about males noticing them more, that they're being more connected, their productivity. A lot of it is exactly the same. I'm not going to go into all the female comments as well that have been through it, but I will mention this. For a female, I've had to say that the sex addiction withdrawal is much more difficult than the cannabis, cigarette, alcohol, amphetamines, and ecstasy withdrawals I've gone through. I've been a heavy consumer and addict of all these substances and stopped them all at the same time 4.5 years ago. So this often is not an easy thing. It requires an external source, the power of the Lord, to undergo this. And then it requires just a simple two-word instruction to yourself when you're tempted. It's called hands off. Women who stop masturbating, better mood, greater emotional balance, increased self-discipline, effectiveness, motivation, improved well-being and fitness. Men are noticing me. They make new friends. Their depression is now gone. Before I close, there is one other main item I'd like to bring about that links EQ and IQ that's not related to sex necessarily. Digital classroom tools like computers, tablets, and smartphones offer exciting opportunities to deepen learning through creativity, collaboration, and connection. But those very devices can also be what to students? Distracting. Similar parents complain when students are required to complete homework assignments online. It's a challenge for students to remain on task. If students don't learn how to concentrate and shut out distractions, research shows they'll have a much harder time succeeding in almost every area of life. Attention is under siege more than ever. The real message is because attention is under siege more than it's ever been in human history, we have more distractions than ever before. We have to be more focused on cultivating the skills of attention. If young students don't build up the neural circuitry that focused attention requires, they could have problems controlling their emotions and even being empathetic. It turns out the circuitry for paying attention is identical for the circuits for managing distressing emotions. Notice that. The attentional circuitry needs to have the experience of sustained episodes of concentration, reading the text, understanding and listening to what the teacher is saying in order to build the mental models that create someone who is well educated. One of the keys to success is a digital Sabbath every day, sometime when kids aren't being distracted by devices at all and are engaged in focused learning. So I would take heed to this. You're going to have advantages for smartphones and internet and those type of things. Make sure you have sustained periods of time where none of that is available, because it will actually improve your IQ and your EQ. Once your EQ improves, this will be signs that it does improve. You'll be curious about people you don't know. You'll have an accurate knowledge with your own strengths and weaknesses. You'll be able to focus now without easily getting distracted. When you're upset, you'll know exactly why, not just the situation, but your thoughts behind it. You will find that you're getting along with most people. You'll care deeply about being a good moral person, and you'll take time to slow down and help others. You'll have empathy for others in need. In addition, you'll become good at reading other people's emotions and their facial expressions. You'll become a better judge of character. Truth or accuracy in thought will become very important to you. You will become self-motivated. You'll know when to say no. And after a fall or lapse, you take responsibility and get right back up. And in addition to that, if you have some talents and IQ with it and a strong work ethic, you will have all the ingredients necessary to become a great leader. And that's what this camp meeting is all about leading. So take care of your frontal lobe. Protect it from mechanical injury. Supply it with good oxygen. That means good exercise, deep breathing. Give it good nutrition. Get adequate sunlight. Turns out vitamin D and serotonin are important. Control the inputs. Let's get rid of the music and the entertainment and the movies that are impairing our EQ and IQ. Exercise it just like a muscle. If we don't use it, we're going to lose it. And one of the best ways of exercising it is studying and scriptural themes and spiritual themes. Work with your hands in 3D. Turns out 30 minutes of work a day with your hands in 3D, like washing the dishes, is also important. And then regular circadian rhythm, early to bed, early to rise, and having that weekly day of rest as well. So I ask you, do you want to be more intelligent? And if you want to be any of these things that are mentioned here on the screen, make better decisions, greater ability to empathize, review your life habits. See what there can be that you can make a change. Make a decision and be courageous and step out and do the Lord's will. The Apostle Paul says, finally, I beseech you, therefore, brethren, by the mercies of God. He's pleading with the brethren, I beseech you that you present your bodies a what? Living sacrifice, wholly acceptable unto God, which is your reasonable service. And do not be conformed to this world, but be what? Transformed by the renewing of your mind, that ye may prove what is that good and acceptable and perfect will of God. Ellen White says, the Lord has given man capacity for continual improvement and has granted him all possible aid in the work. Through the provisions of divine grace, we may attain almost to the excellence of angels. And by coming to this youth meeting this afternoon, you've walked in actually to the largest room in the world. And that is the room for improvement. Take advantage of the room for improvement that's being presented to you today and make positive lifestyle changes. The wise man said, wisdom is better than rubies. Money seems to be of great interest to people these days. But if you had the opportunity of winning $100 million or getting more wisdom, Solomon had things in perspective when he wrote this, and he said, wisdom is better than rubies. In fact, he went on to say, all the things that may be desired are not to be compared to it. So no matter what your desire is, there's something better, and that is wisdom. That is IQ and EQ combined. Let's bow our heads. Father in heaven, we thank you that you are interested in our health of body, mind, and soul. And as this information has been presented, we know there is room for improvement in virtually everybody that came here today. And for those that do have a desire to not only learn this information, but apply it in their own lives on a consistent basis, it's now time for them to notify you of this desire by standing at this time. Lord, you see those that have stood to their feet, that have a desire to improve physically, mentally, and spiritually. We thank you that the gospel message not only gives us good information, but gives us the source of Holy Spirit power working through and in our life, that we might accomplish all that is best for us. And now, Lord, I pray that that Spirit would incline each person who's made this commitment today, moment by moment and day by day, to stay connected to you and to your plan. In Jesus' name.